Hi, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're new, my name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. Today we are doing I think it's my second update, the third video in my rotating palette series. If you are unfamiliar with this project, this thing that I'm doing, I stopped doing my pan those eyeshadows because I was feeling really burnt out on just focusing in on like 5 shades at a time and hitting pan in those and like not really touching the rest of the palettes that I have in my collection. So this is a way for me to try to get more use out of my collection as a whole and not just like a shade in this palette, a shade in that palette, a shade in that palette. So it's the palette as a whole. So I do keep track of my palettes, the shades, how many times I use them. I'm not going to really like go shade by shade, but we are going to talk about palettes, and I wish I had the number of like how many times I dipped into like one palette versus another palette that I have in this. So the palettes that I had in for this past month were the Glamlite Ice Cream Dream palette, which is a beautiful, colorful, fun palette like that. Absolutely great time of year to pull that in. I have the Going Coconuts palette, which again, very neutral palette. Very happy to pair this with some of these colorful shadows that I was focusing on, and just, I've been really craving neutrals. I was craving neutrals a lot when I rolled a bunch of these in, which was good. I have the Natasha Denona green brown palette, which is so pretty. I was so excited to roll this one in. And then the last palette we had was the Douce palette, which is this guy. So I'm just going to talk about the palettes. I'll let you know if I didn't use any shades, how many or what shade I used the most. So the first one we're going to talk about is my Natasha Denona green brown palette, and it's strictly because it's the first palette that I have tallied up here. So I'll put a picture of what the palette looked like versus what we're looking like now. I don't think it's going to have sizable differences. It definitely looks, I think, a little bit more worn. But as a whole, it probably doesn't look all too different because I was spreading my love and not like drilling into a shade. I feel like this shadow in particular definitely looks more used. This like, I cannot pronounce the name of this. It's Pinija, I want to say. I don't know. This, I have, my update hasn't gone up, but that got rolled into my Fantasy Self palette. That video should be coming soon, but the shade that I use the most in this palette is actually this guy, which I'm very surprised with because this is just a boring, basic, like blending shade. So I do not use these kinds of shades to set my eye primer. I like a tacky eye primer, but what I do use these kinds of shades for is either if I'm doing like an all matte look, putting that on the inner part or like in the where I would put a shimmer on the lid, or what I typically use those kinds of shades for is if I get a little too crazy with my blend, I use them to blend and soften my crease out. So I'm surprised that I used it that much. Honestly, I'm very surprised. That one I used 4 times. The most I used in this palette, but it was a good staple shade, which is always good. I did a lot of like palette bingos when I first, like the first week I rolled these in. I filmed my palette bingo. Obviously, I will have that linked in the cards. But there were other times where I would just like randomly generate either a shade out of one palette and kind of make a look out of it, or just like totally randomize a shade from each of the palettes and then create a look with that. And I had a lot of like very similar mint chocolate chip kind of looks. There were a handful of shades that I did not use. I didn't use 7 of the shadows in this palette. Glamlite Ice Cream Dream palette. This had a surprising number of shadows that I did not reach for. I did not reach for 10 of the eyeshadows in this palette. But the ones that I did, I feel like I got a decent amount of use in this. So again, I'll put a picture of what we looked like at the beginning of the month versus now. So I don't know if there's really sizable differences in like what it's going to look like. I think the one that looks the most used is the French vanilla shade up here because I used it as an inner corner quite often. The shade I used the most is actually this yellow one, which makes sense because I pulled a neon yellow in my Shop My Stash and I have a yellow eye base. And this is just a really great like way to add some color, but not do like an over-the-top color. So even if I had a neutral eye, I could throw that into the crease to blend up into my like upper crease, I guess, to just kind of make a neutral look have a little bit of a color to it. So yeah, I'm very surprised actually that the matte yellow was the one I used the most when there's so many beautiful shimmer shades in this palette. But I was very happy to get more use in my Ice Cream Dream palette. I have a hair in my eyeball. All right, and then we're left with my two 9-pan palettes. So we'll just talk about the Douce first, which is like, I love this palette so stinking much. It is so gorgeous. I just love the color story with it. It's just very unique, but also like a staple. Like, that's a very weird description of it. But I used every single shade in this palette one time. This one I actually used twice, so that is my most used shade in that palette. I struggled. I used these two for the first time today. This in my upper crease very lightly, and then this on the inner portion of my lid, which I don't even know if I really put an eye highlight, so maybe we should just tap a little bit more of puffs on my inner corners. So I used every shade except for this one once. This one I used twice. I really did not want to work on Mont Blanc at all. I don't like this shade. I think it just doesn't perform well. But I rolled that in my palette roulette video. I thought the look actually turned out pretty nice though, that I filmed for like the multi-palette bingo. But I like this palette. I really like this palette, and I'm happy that I got more use out of it. I'm a little sad that I didn't use it more than like one time each. But I know that I had a multitude of looks that I used that with, so that's okay. Then the last palette is the Going Coconuts palette, which is the most neutral out of all of them. Again, I used every shade in this one at least one time. Maybe I should have it the right side so when we do the side by side you can see it better. I already had Pan in Lovely Bunch, so that's not like it's new Pan or anything like that. This shade is actually in my Fantasy Self palette, so I just chucked it back in there to try to get more use. This shade was by far the most used because it's also in another project pan. So I used that one. I tried to dip into it a lot. I do have it on the outer corner of my eye today. There's no pan yet. But the second most shade notable is this guy, Shredded, which I used 6 times. This one 7, this one 6. Everything else, I used it either 1 to 3 times. So the majority of the mattes 1 time, and then these 2 shimmers, like the first shimmer and then the second last. This shimmer and this shimmer I used 3 times each. This is an inner corner. This is such a... I didn't realize how much I liked this. This is the shade De Coco. This shade De Coco has, like, it's a neutral brown, but I don't know if you're going to be able to pick it up. It has, like, purple shimmers in it, and it is so unique. It is so unique and so cool having that metallic, just, like, taupey brown, like a deep taupey brown, with like purple reflex. It's so cool. It is so cool. So I really enjoyed that shadow. Like that was used to be my least favorite shade shimmer wise in this palette, apart from like I really just don't like this shade, but this used to be my least favorite shimmer, and now I found like a new appreciation for it. So I really enjoyed the fact that doing this kind of challenge, I guess, has opened my eyes to a shade that I didn't think I liked, but now I really do like. So I'm happy about this. I'm happy about the palettes that we used, but I'm going to be even more happy when we get to draw brand new palettes. I have my pretty random up with the numbers 1 to 36, which is how many palettes I have. I actually have depotted 2 of my palettes that are on this list, but if I pull them, I can put them in a magnetic palette and store them, so it's not a problem. Plus, it'll help me get more use out of like that palette, even though it's singles right now. If I roll a palette that I have already used in this like rotation, I will roll a different one. So I'm going to roll for four palettes. And we get shade number 4, shade number 4, number 33, number 28, which is actually a palette that I already had in. This was the Sashimi City, which we had in the previous month. So I'm going to re-roll for shade 28. 14, which was the Glamlite Ice Cream Dream. So we're going to just re-roll again. So sorry. 10, which I can roll. That's a good one. And the last one is not 10. 16. Okay. I am going to go ahead and pull those 4 palettes and I will be right back. Okay, so I am back with my 4 palettes that I chose. And I have to say, I'm very excited. They're smaller palettes than what we worked on last month for the most part. And that excites me because I know I can touch every single shade that I rolled into this project at least one time, if not more, and see substantial usage in them as a whole. And it's also exciting because some of the palettes are smaller, they're easier to travel with, and they just told us we have to go back into the office like for split shift, so I'm very bummed about it, but it's also like this is going to be a good like segue where I can reach into some of these and bring them with me to quickly do my makeup at work if I'm going to go into the office kind of thing. So I'm going to start numerically, not necessarily the order that I drew them in, but on my list how they make sense in like I can tell you what number they corresponded to. So palette number 4 was the Natasha Denona Camel palette, and I'm very excited about this. I don't reach into this palette enough, and it's just like a very cute like staple. It's a very nice staple palette. So this is what we are looking like. This shade Copperstone is definitely my least favorite. It like hard pans over. It's very weird, but it is a beautiful shadow. The shades, but I'm excited. I obviously have one pan in this palette in the shade Dune over here. It was in a pan, those eyeshadows, but I am excited to reach into this and get use out of this palette. I'm very excited about that. The next palette that we rolled in was a fun one in regards to like, we just went with like a boring neutral palette, which it's a staple neutral. It's not boring, but we have a very exciting palette, and that is my Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. And I have not got enough love in this palette. As you can see, it looks brand new, untouched. I've used it a handful of times, but not enough to justify just like having it sit in my collection. So I'm so excited to reach into this. And I think like this, we could have some fun lower lash line moments with this palette. So I am really excited about this. I'm super excited about this, especially like we have some like really warm tones that we can wear to transition into fall, but we also have like all of these other 6 fun shadows to play with just like in general. So I'm super, super pumped about this palette. I bought this, I think 2 years ago, 2019, like right in August. So I'm very excited about this. Then we have my Depotted palette. So I'm going to put it in this Colourpop Magnetic palette. This was the Juvia's Place Magic palette. And I filmed a video depotting this. I have not posted a video depotting this, but we made this essentially into the Magic Mini, but singles, and now I can like reach into them and dip into them and put them in my Build Your Own palette, which a couple of these shadows were actually in my Build My Own palette for this month. I have this palette that I'm so excited to pull in. Again, some of these like cool tones are gonna work so well with all of these. These are gonna pair so well together, because if you are like me and you think like this Magic palette by Juvia's Place is like missing some essential like blending shades to kind of make these a little bit more workable, like these dark purple and then the dark blue, this is going to be perfect for it. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited. And like a shade like Faso, which is my absolute favorite shade in this palette. Oh my gosh. I have to just... It's so pretty. It deserves its own little moment. It deserves its own moment, I swear. And I'm so excited to work on that. And it'll pair really well with the shade that I just rolled into my deck of panning. Not Ditch the Discontinued. My deck of panning project pan. That will work well. And then some of these other shades will work really well. And then a palette that I'm really excited, and I really have only reached for it a very small handful of times, and it was so generously gifted to me by Haley. That is this NBA Cosmetics Viva La Vida palette. I'm so excited. She got this for me for my birthday. Thank you, Haley. And I've just been such a trash human and not used it, but I am so ecstatic to use it. These tones right here scream this time of year, like really anything but the blues, but I am super, super excited. I can see myself playing with the blues a touch. Again, they will pair very, very well with my Magic palette over here, as well as the Sugar Pill palette. There are some of those like matte blues that I can pair with this, which will be really nice. Oh, the shade Prickly Pear just gets me so excited. It's just one of my favorite kind of eyeshadow colors. To me, this kind of green definitely can be paired for a neutral look. So I can wear this to work and feel very comfortable and confident in it. I can pair it with other shadows and feel very comfortable and confident in it. And I'm very excited to get more use out of the NBA formula and try the NBA formula a little bit better and a little bit more. But yeah, that is my update for my, I guess my update. I don't know if it's really an update or just like my new rotation for my rotating palette series that I am doing. Let me know if there's any palettes that you would like to see dedicated, oh my gosh, how in the world do people do this? Let me know if there's any palettes in here that you'd like to see either a dedicated look with, a dedicated video on, or if you just want to see more pandos or palette bingos like I've been doing. But that is it. That is everything. My camera's overheating, so I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane, and safe, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye!